when my sister tried to cheat me after my mother's death. 3 weeks after my mother's funeral, my sister called me to say that the property had already been transferred, fully, into her name only. She said it had been done before my mother passed, that it was what our mother had wanted, and that she hoped I would understand. She said it calmly, the way you say something you have been rehearsing. I was standing in my kitchen holding a glass of water when she told me, and I stood there for a long time after the call ended before I put the glass down. What followed across the next 6 weeks was the most methodical thing I have ever done in my life. I am going to walk you through it exactly, because the details matter, and because if you have ever had someone you trusted completely make a decision that required them to count on you not paying attention, this story will feel familiar in a way you may not have expected. Let me take you back to the beginning. My mother had been unwell for about 18 months before she died. Not suddenly, there was time. The kind of time that is both a gift and its own particular weight, where you are grateful for every additional week and exhausted by what each week asks of everyone involved. During those 18 months, my sister and I had divided responsibilities, the way families do when these things happen, practically and without much discussion, filling in the gaps around each other, without sitting down and formally agreeing to anything. My sister lived 40 minutes from my mother. I lived further, about 2 hours away. The geography shaped everything. She handled the day-to-day presence, the visits, the appointments she could attend in person, the relationship with the care team who came in 3 times a week. I handled the financial side, the medical insurance queries, the paperwork that arrived by post and email, the accounts, the documentation that required attention but not physical presence. We spoke every few days. We did not talk about what would happen afterward, because that conversation felt like a concession neither of us was ready to make. What I did not know, during those 18 months, was that a separate set of paperwork was also being handled. Without me. Without any conversation. Without any indication it was happening at all. Tell me honestly in the comments before I go further. If a family member you were grieving alongside and working alongside through something this serious later told you they had made a major legal decision affecting both of you without telling you, what would your first instinct be? To confront them immediately, to say nothing, and start quietly gathering information, or something else entirely? Because the choice I made in the 48 hours after that phone call determined everything that came after, and I have thought about whether it was the right one many times since. I said nothing to my sister for 48 hours. Not because I was composing myself, though I was. Not because I was planning, though I was doing that too. I said nothing because the call had raised a specific question I needed to answer before I said anything at all, which was whether what she had told me was actually true. Because there is a version of that story where our mother had genuinely wanted the property transferred before she died, had discussed it with my sister, and had done so through the correct legal channels with full documentation. That version exists. I needed to know if this was that version before I responded to any other version of it. The first thing I did was call the lawyer who had handled my mother's affairs. Not my sister's lawyer, the family lawyer who had been involved with my parents since before I was born, who knew my mother's wishes and her history, and who I had spoken to briefly at the funeral. I asked a simple question. Had he been involved in any property transfer in the last 18 months? He said he had not. He said he had not been asked to be. That answer took 11 minutes to get. It changed the shape of everything. Here is what the next 6 weeks looked like. Because this is where the story becomes something other than a phone call. I requested the property transfer documents through the relevant land registry office. This is a public record in most jurisdictions, and anyone can request it, which my sister had either not known or had counted on me not knowing. The documents arrived within 10 days. The transfer had been executed 7 weeks before my mother's death, during a period when my mother was in the advanced stages of her illness, under a power of attorney arrangement that I had not been aware existed. I sat with those documents for a long time. I read them several times in the specific way you read something you are hoping will reveal a different meaning the 4th time than it did the first. I am not a lawyer and I made no assumptions about what they meant legally. What I did know was that I had been the one managing the financial paperwork for 18 months, and I had never once seen any instruction, any reference, any mention in any email or posted letter or conversation with any professional that this transfer was intended or in progress. The entire financial correspondence had moved through me for a year and a half. This had moved around me. I also knew what my mother's wishes had been because she had told me directly. Not once. Several times, in the quiet conversations that happen when someone knows their time is limited and uses the time they have left to make sure the people they love understand what they mean to each other and what they want for them. She had been specific, she had been clear, she had used names, and she had used numbers, and she had said what she said in the way people speak when they want to be remembered accurately. What I was holding in those documents did not match any version of those conversations. Tell me something in the comments, because I need to understand how other people navigate this. If you were holding a document that told a different story from everything a person you trusted had said to you, I went to a solicitor. Not to start a legal process immediately, but to understand what I was looking at. She reviewed the documents, she asked questions. She took 3 days and came back with an assessment that I will summarize as carefully as I can, because the legal specifics are less important than what they meant. She said the power of attorney arrangement had been validly executed. She also said that the circumstances of its use, the timing relative to my mother's condition at that stage of her illness, and the absence of any independent legal advice given to my mother at the point of the transfer created a situation where the transfer could be challenged on specific grounds. She said it would not be simple. She said it would be expensive. She said it would require time. She asked me what I wanted to do. I did not answer that day. I went home and I sat with the question for a week, which is the longest I have deliberately held a single decision without acting on it in my adult life. I want to tell you what that week felt like, because I think it matters. It did not feel like strength or patience. It felt like standing at the edge of something, and knowing that once you stepped off it, you could not step back. There were moments in that week where I picked up my phone to call my sister and put it back down. Not because I was afraid of the conversation, but because I understood that the conversation would end something regardless of how it went, and I wanted to be certain before I ended it. I thought about my mother every day of that week. I thought about what she had said in those direct, specific conversations near the end. I thought about what she had wanted for both of her children after she was gone. And I understood that what she had wanted for both of us was not the same thing as what I was owed, and that both things were true at the same time, and that I had to decide which truth to act on. By the end of the week, I knew what I was going to do. Not what I wanted, which was simpler and less useful. What I was actually going to do. By the end of the week, I knew what I was going to do. Not what I wanted, which was simpler and less useful. What I was actually going to do. Here is the insight that came at the end of that week, and it is not the one I expected to arrive at. The question was never simply whether I could get back what I was legally entitled to. The question was what I was willing to spend to do it. And I do not mean financially. I mean in every other unit of cost that a legal process between two siblings over a parent's estate extracts from everyone involved. I thought about my mother. I thought about what she had been clear about wanting. I thought about what she would have wanted for both of her children after she was gone. And I understood that these two things were not the same answer. I called my sister. Not to confront her, not to present the documents, not to tell her what the solicitor had said. I called her and I asked her to meet me. Just the two of us, in person. She agreed, and I could hear in the pause before she agreed that she had been waiting for this call. We met at a café near where we had grown up. We sat across from each other for the first time since the funeral. I told her what I had found out. I told her about the land registry documents. I told her about the solicitor's assessment. I told her everything I knew, without raising my voice, without accusation in my tone, because I had spent 6 weeks being methodical, and I was not going to stop in the final conversation. And then I stopped talking, and I waited. She was quiet for a long time. And then she told me the truth, not all of it, but enough. There had been pressure from her husband. There had been a financial situation I had not been aware of. There had been a decision made quickly during a period of fear that she had then not known how to undo or explain. She did not say she was sorry directly, but she said enough that I understood what had happened and why. And understanding why is different from forgiving it, but it is also different from not understanding it. We reached an arrangement between us, documented formally this time with both our lawyers present, that reflected what our mother had actually said she wanted. It was not perfect. These things are never perfect. But it was settled without a court and without the kind of damage that cannot be undone. I have not had a normal conversation with my sister since that cafe meeting. I do not know if I will. That is the part of this story that does not resolve cleanly, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. So here is what I want to know from you, and I am asking this genuinely, not rhetorically. If someone in your own family, someone you had trusted and worked alongside through the hardest thing your family had faced, made a decision like this, would you have gone directly to a lawyer? Would you have confronted them first and given them a chance to explain before involving anyone else? Or would you have done what I did and spent weeks building the complete picture in silence before saying a single word? There is no right answer to that question. I have been living with my version of it for 2 years, and I am still not certain I chose correctly. Tell me what you would have done in the comments. I will read every one. If you like stories like this, the kind where nothing is simple and the resolution is real rather than clean, subscribe, because this channel is built on true stories told honestly, and there are more of them coming.